Okay. Oh, that's good. Good evening, everyone. I want to call to order the Community Planning Committee meeting of Monday, May 13th. And committee, we have one PINK to add to correspondence. And this includes a number of letters, all related to the buffer land. And with that, are there any other additions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Gray and Councillor Donaldson second. All in favor? Thank you very much. That's carried. We do have one presentation tonight, and I would now like to call up Ms. Vio Mitchell to talk about Metchosin Community Day.
Yeah, thanks very much. Vio Mitchell, 4198 Still Meadow Road. I'm here on behalf of the Metchosin Day Committee and some of our members, Helen Fletcher and others are in the room. We're here to do two things. One is to request council to support our holding the Metchosin Community Day again on Sunday, September 8th. And also, which I'll come to in a minute, also to request council's continued endorsement in putting some funds aside to cover some of the additional expenses. But maybe what I can do first is just say that, as you know, when I spoke to you last fall, 2023 was our experiment coming out of COVID, and we were actually pretty pleased with how the event went. So the things we're going to do, we're going to maintain a lot of what we sought, which is really another positive, low-key event that celebrates all that's Metchosin. So we'll maintain all the children's events, the digger, the hay ride, the tractor ride, the junior firefighters, etc. The contests, the veggie, the pet, the pie, the photography. We'll have all the Metchosin not-for-profits represented, including having space for the 4-H, the shearing, the pigs, etc. The vibrant entertainment stage, which is always a hit. And our very famous lamb and salmon barbecue, which is organised by Helen Fletcher. Last year, Beecher Bay, for the first time, the Sianyu Nation actually did all the hot dogs and hamburgers. It was a huge hit, and they're very keen to come back, which we are delighted with. The parking, which is what we had been particularly worried about last year, actually worked out pretty well, with a combination of using the old school, this area back here, a bit of reorientation on the roadside. We had a St. Mary's shuttle, thanks to LA Limo. And we had, thanks to the District of Metchosin, professional flaggers who were able to manage the traffic on the roads. So, was it busy? Yes. Was it at any time actually out of control? No. So we felt that we've got a good mix there. Turning a little bit to some of the other features, the producers maintained their market down in the producers area. The equestrians had a really vibrant set of activities, and all those seem to work well. We'll definitely talk to the producers whether they're happy down there or if they do want to move up to the top. But the idea would be, once again, no commercial vendors outside of what's already part of Metchosin. And this year as well, we'd like to continue with no beer garden. We have access to Mile Zero. They're very capable and willing to, and we can certainly promote them. So we'd like to maintain a beer garden free event. In terms of things we need to certainly improve on, we need obviously more volunteers for parking. We need to clarify the hours a bit more. There's still people who think we do a pancake breakfast. So we'll get back into the swing of it. But these were just some of the ideas we had. The other thing we did last time was we did very little advertising. We advertised on the Fire Hall, in the Metchosin Facebook site, and the Muse. We're proposing the same level, no more advertising on the radio, Saunders Subaru. The idea to just keep this a very low-key, Metchosin-focused event. In terms of costs, last year, as always, in prior years, Metchosin Days cost around $20,000. Last year cost us $19,250. It cost a little bit more than, because we actually kept certain things the same, like the toilets, like the rentals, the flaggers, just to see how the event would go. We do think we'll be able to economize in certain areas this year, which we can talk more about. In terms of the breakdown in costs, the Metchosin Day Committee covered $13,400, and the municipality, with great thanks, covered $5,821, the flaggers primarily. So coming to the costs, the District of Metchosin support is really critical to this event. The municipal staff are always phenomenal, as are the public works crew. We are obviously hoping you will approve to go ahead with September 8th, 2024, but we're also hoping we can count on the $10,000 in the budget, although we do anticipate this coming in much less. However, if the event is a washout with rain, and then the Metchosin Day Committee will be completely in the red and would need to come back to council to offset the sunk costs. There are sunk costs when you order toilets and things, those are all paid out in advance. So hoping to once again maintain that support from the District of Metchosin. And I'm just very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. I have a thought or two, but committee, any questions for Theo, Ms. Mitchell?
No questions, but so much appreciation for carrying on. Thank you.
It's a great committee, a very enthusiastic one. So.
Yes, you do have $10,000 in the budget, so that's good. And there will be sunshine, so we're all good. And I thought it was a great success. The parking was phenomenal. I saw the layout. Hopefully somebody drew that out so that we have that going forward for other events. And I think it was great that we actually could move around quite a bit, having the producers where they were. I got great feedback from them. The equestrian, of course, always going to be in the same spot in the Cobbler Cafe in the community house. So using the whole property was great to just keep people moving. It was well done. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Just my own comment. It was interesting to be part of the process, sort of at the beginning, because you organized a brainstorming session, and there were lots of great ideas, but lurking behind all this was the parking. And you took a bunch of steps to simplify, test some options, but ultimately simplify. So congratulations and thanks for all your work. Just to testify to your hands-on role, I did work with you to lay out some of the parking lines, and we must have done 100 or 200 or something like that. So
280.
So excellent work. It was my first time last year volunteering at the dinner, and I just have to say what confidence and security I had, like being guided by Helen Fletcher to my space and being told what to do, and it was great. So looking forward to the upcoming event. Councillor, anything? Or?
Yeah, just thank you. And last year was a big leap of faith to go in a whole new direction and following COVID and everything, and it just turned out great. The comments were terrific, and well done to you and your committee for keeping going with it.
No, thanks, and we're super excited about this year, and thanks for your support. And if there's anyone here in the room or online watching who wants to volunteer, please do so. You can reach us at info@metchosinday.ca or through me directly, or Jill Peterson, or any member of the committee. So thank you very much.
Great. So one point of business committee, I think it would be good to pass a resolution now, if you so see it that way, to recommend to council that we support the hosting of Metchosin Community Day on September 8th. Do I have someone who can make that motion?
You moved. I'll second it.
Sure. Okay. So moved. Ms. Mo, you good? Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. Just call the question. All in favor? Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. We're next going to move to public participation. I suspect that there might be some comments on one of the reports that's further on in the agenda. And if I could beg the committee's indulgence for just a minute, I just want to make a comment or two about this. And it relates to the recommendation from our CAO that we engage the CRD in discussions around the potential sale of the buffer land. That is in there. I just want to flag that this, I want to do this because this has been a bit of a contentious issue in the past, and it has raised some emotions, and I just want to address a few things before we get to public participation and hear your comments on this. So again, we have a report from our CAO recommending that we engage the CRD in discussions about a potential sale of the buffer land, with this being a natural park with terms and conditions that support an ecological or conservation outcome. And just going back a few years, the 2017 land swap referendum question included specific reference to a green space buffer that would come to Metchosin if the referendum was successful. And the point of that buffer, as stated at the time, was that it was to serve as a transition space between the urban and commercial area of Langford, in the Central Mountain area that was to be developed, and the rural space of Metchosin. Now, speaking personally, I have long felt that we have an obligation to the residents of Neil Road to ensure that the green space buffer is maintained and ideally enhanced, and I believe the rest of council shares that commitment. The challenge before us all is how to protect and manage this 113.5 acre parcel and manage it within our resourcing realities. And the challenge is a really complicated one. So first of all, hundreds of homes are going to be constructed immediately adjacent to the buffer line of Langford. There'll be a sizable stormwater detention pond serving those homes, and this will require its own construction process and an access road. And formally or informally, there will be access points from the residential area to the buffer land. It was pointed out to me that one of the iterations of the layout of the residential area had an open road into the business park. So there's potentially a clear access point into the buffer land from that. So with all of that and more, we need to go back to the question and the challenge of how do we manage this area effectively. And with this question it's now brought back to council and staff, and we also, with that, have to ask how we manage this in a manner consistent with our resourcing and our fiscal realities. And I look forward to hearing more from Mr. Payette as we go. So I hope that's okay to just do that little preamble. I will now ask if folks have comments for public participation. 4 minutes if we could, and if I could ask people to state their names and where the street they live on.
I was met at the door by one of my neighbors, Mr. Thomas Cole. He has presented me with letters for you. I'll just leave it at that for him. Now I will say my piece. And because I have, my name is Bonnie Buber. I'm at 1135 Neil. And because I had prepared my little speech before you had given the preamble, let's say, please bear with me. I refer to the report from our CAO Payette regarding the Bufferland Working Group recommendations attached to tonight's agenda. From what I have read in this document, it is apparent by your calculations that our small municipality of just over 5,000 residents, much less taxpayers, cannot afford to support the bufferland as part of our district. This is sad for so many reasons. I want to point out that anything that's repeated in what I have to say, the comments are intentional. First of all, we must remember, and like I say, bear with me, that this green space bufferland is exactly that. It's not a park. This was what was voted on in the January 2017 referendum. 76% of residents voted in favor to secure 112 acres known as the green space bufferland. We need to uphold the results of the referendum as we move forward. The bufferland should not be lumped in with the 3 parcels of land known as sections 25, 28, and 95 because they are designated as parkland. The green space bufferland is land, in my opinion, that can be left in its current state. This land is an asset. This land does not cost us anything. We annually receive monies. To 2023's income was $14,000 from the industrial park, and that money can be used to offset any costs required for the bufferland. As the industrial park business increases, so does the taxation dollars received. The bufferland is currently zoned CR2 and CR3, although an ecological reserve designation is warranted given the sensitive ecosystems and existing natural flora and fauna, some of which are on the BC Red List. MEASC has advised that the area is 90% coastal Douglas fir, which is on this list. Please also see Councillor Shukin's Protected Ecological Buffer Background Report dated November 21st, 2023. This is a one-of-a-kind area and it should be treated as such. In October 2021, the District of Metchosin published a disposition notice in the Golden Stream Gazette that announced the proposed sale of the bufferland. Metchosin residents initiated a petition to stop the sale. Over 550 signatures were collected in short order and presented to Council. Metchosin has committed in good faith to their part in the tripartite agreement with Langford and the Shiano First Nations. Metchosin should not reduce its geographical landscapes any further. We must maintain our rural community and adhere to the referendum question that was to buffer us from urban sprawl. The intention of the bufferland is to protect further encroachment from urban activity. This protection encompasses the neighbors living adjacent to Center Mountain residential development, the Metchosin and Bilston Creeks, the wildlife corridor, and the various ecosystems. With the development of the Center Mountain residential area, there has been clear-cut logging, continued mining, earth movers, blasting 6 days a week, many tons without mats. Habitat has been destroyed, wildlife displaced. This will continue should the bufferland be turned over to the CRD or into a park. Across Highway 14 is the Stoop Wilderness Park. Hundreds of humans traverse that park on a daily basis. Again, wildlife has been drastically displaced and the land eroded from the imposition of human recreation. I did not see anything mentioned in the discussion part of this report about having the bufferland as an educational study area for post-secondary institutions, such as Lester B. Pearson College, Camosun College, Royal Roads University, or the University of Victoria, as noted in the Bufferland Working Group recommendations. Has this concept even been reviewed? Because it is not mentioned, it makes me wonder if each of the preferred options have been given a fair adjudication. The phases 1 to 4 are not precisely and accurately adjudicated and or communicated. A thorough process of all options should have been included in this report. The Bufferland Working Group worked for 6 months on this project. It will take time to research the next steps. There are no quick answers here. May I suggest that the CAO meet with the Bufferland Working Group to discuss all of the options and possibilities. I was not surprised that PTASC recently announced that as they look ahead, the bufferland and land swap areas are a large amount of land to become parks for PTASC to manage. The bufferland area should not even be on their radar. It's not a park, contrary to some people's belief.
Ms. Boover, sorry, I have to ask.
I've got
4 minutes for.
You can have my time.
No, keep going, but we have to abide by some time limits. But
okay. Someone's going to give me their.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Sorry, but
can I buy those?
Keep going.
Is it like well? Can I buy a vowel? I am concerned that an immediate rezoning to parkland P3 sends a message to the public that this is a park with no restrictions of use. Please refer to the Bufferland Working Group recommendations where a new unique zoning is recommended. Perhaps its own zone of ecological reserve, maybe ER1. It seems to me that a rezoning from P3 to ER1 could be difficult and costly. Why do we really need to rezone twice? Because I did the majority of the municipality's park management plan research, I feel compelled to comment. This requested research was to compare what other areas had in place so we could possibly use it in helping us develop our plan. It was decided that the green space bufferland would need a management plan of its own due to the uniqueness of the area. In addition, by immediately rezoning to P3, the monetary value of the bufferland will be considerably less than its current assessed value of $3,197,000. Not advisable when negotiating with any type of third party. I will be very disappointed if this council moves forward with this fact-finding session with the CRD, resulting in a disposition of this land asset. Remember, the CRD has sold acquired lands previously. Bilston Farm is one example. It can happen again. Once in their hands, they can do what they want with that land. They're not to be trusted in this regard. As to revenue potential for Metchosin, why would we need additional funds to secure land that the district could manage? Why would we need monetary gain when these lands are supposed to be a green space buffer between rural and urban lands? Consider this statement of wisdom from Mahatma Gandhi. It is health It is real wealth and not pieces of gold and silver. Our health is our natural areas, our investment. It is up to this current council to stand up for and carry out the original intention of the land swap referendum that residents voted to keep as green space buffer land. It should not be sold, and it should be left as its intended purpose. I asked the CAO and council to meet with the Bufferland Working Group for a fulsome discussion regarding the list of options and possible outcomes. And finally, I need to acknowledge that in this report it says there will be further public discussion. I'm thankful. I look forward to hearing more as things unfold, but tonight I want council members to remember that protecting the green space bufferland was and is a high priority for this term of office, and it is part of your strategic plan. Please take the time to consider all the options thoroughly to protect our rural Metchosin. Please refer this back to staff. Thank you, and I appreciate whoever gave it money.
Thank you, Ms. Hoover, who was part of the Bufferland Working Group, and I want to acknowledge that there are a number of other members from the Bufferland Working Group here as well. So, thank you. And I do have to ask folks if they can try and keep their comments within 4 minutes. So, Ms. Bacon.
Hi, Beth Bacon, Metchosin resident. And first of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the working group, the Bufferland Working Group, and to our CAO, Bob Pyatt. And I see a lot of overlap and agreement in how they have assessed the situation and come up with the pluses and the minuses for this course of action and that course of action. It's very well thought out. Both of parties have really thought it out and been very realistic. And we're not in a good position here. There is a real threat from the high-density residential development on our border. That's not something we might be able to handle, and I do take seriously that they say that maybe the use will get out of control and it'll just end up being a Langford Park. And I think we have to protect ourselves. I've got some suggestions that maybe haven't been thought of. Well, I disagree with the last speaker because I do think that you should rezone immediately to parks. It's only going to cost $5,000 to $10,000 according to Mr. Pyatt. And it's silly and inappropriate to have the leftover zoning from Center Mountain days. So it's more important, although we don't maybe have the right zoning for ecological reserve. Park is maybe as close as we have, but to take a page from the playbook of CRD, they have to. They can't just buy land for ecological reserve. I think in their mandate, it has to be park, but it can be park in some future generation. You have to say it's park reserve. So what I would like us to say is that this is park reserve, and that it is sensitive area, and there's no public access for as long as it takes for us to know the path forward. And I agree that the retention pond is a liability, and there's cost involved, and I don't know that we're up for the challenge. My heart sank, and I hadn't thought of this, that to service that retention pond, there's got to be a road to the retention pond. Yuck. But we've got a lot to deal with that we're maybe not equipped to deal with, but to buy us some time, call it park and call it park reserve, no public access, sensitive area. Thank you very much. And I would like to see, I don't want to see us put money into an appraisal right now. I don't see the value in that. I could go on about why, but I'll just say we don't need that right now. And I don't think we need to rush on to coming up with a parks management plan or anything like that right now. What we need to do is control public access. And I think a little bit of money spent on fencing, or whether it's a hedgerow that happens to be prickly, or whatever it is, to protect our land from side entrance there. And if we need a road or some kind of road to access into where the retention pond is, have it be gated as a service access road. and invest a little bit of money in signage. And I think we could get public participation if we call it Park Reserve. And where CRD Parks has done that successfully is they own Souk Hills Regional Park Reserve for years and years and years until they were ready to know what they were doing with it and ready to go ahead. And I think they did the same with Gowan Todd. They acquired it as Park Reserve for as long as it took. So thank you for all the people that have put time and energy and good thought into it, smart people, astute ideas, and I'm just throwing in my little side idea.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. All right, I'm Sherry Davies. I live on 1106 Nail Road. So I just wrote a little something out today. The pros and cons of selling the green space buffer land, all sorts of options. If sold, there would be unknown uses or perhaps more houses, resulting in higher taxes, increased pressure on the already busy Happy Valley Road and Nail Road, and more disruption and displacement of wildlife and natural surroundings being disrupted. If not sold, it could be used as an ecological sensitive important part of our surroundings, keeping the wildlife that's left happy and healthy along with Bilston Creek. It would also be in keeping with the original agreed upon agreement of leaving it as a bufferland green space area between Langford and Metchosin, as was intended in the very beginning. Thank you for your time. P.S. I agree with all the above letters submitted concerning the bufferlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
So few.
Chris Moore, 4545 William Head Road. Like Bonnie, I have prepared some speaking notes in advance, under 4 minutes, and I think even given Councillor Shukin's preamble, I believe they are still valid. So with that, I'd like to speak to a few items tonight in that context, and in light of the number of phone calls and emails I have received over the last 3 days, I'm certain it's fair to say I'm speaking on behalf of the appearing. I have a number of questions that I hope you will address when you get to agenda item number 7. And we'll start by saying that it's good to finally see the recommendations report from the working group, despite its remarkable length. There are, however, some leanings or discrepancies made within this document that are somewhat at odds with the direction taken by the working group members at their last public meeting. In a nutshell, these are perceived urgency now to downzone the bufferlands to park ASAP. And further, at the public working group session, only one member of that group expressed interest in engaging the CRD in some sort of management partnership arrangement. And actually a number of persons appeared quite horrified at the whole concept. I suggest that this reaction on the part of those that said no way is actually quite understandable, given that the CRD Parks focus with respect to parks is and always has been toward human access and use. It's hardly a surprise, given that the Parks Acquisition Fund is basically supported by resident taxes, of course. And at this point in time, there's very little interest, and I ascertain this directly with representatives at the CRD, in broadening out their mandate. So my question to you is, where did this change of direction with respect to exploring engagement possibilities with the CRD come from, and what is the basis for it? Now, the second bit is with regard to a fast down zone of the land in question. Okay, fine. It's a clear demonstration of intent. But for Pete's sakes, and I have sung this song at least 4 times in this very room, do not do this in the absence of an arm's length independent appraisal of the current day value of that land. This, and I can assure you, and this is firsthand again from the CRD, that would be the first item on their agenda, or other more likely pertinent players, whether that be provincial, federal, or whatever. That's where they start, and that's the expectation. So to reiterate, to the best of my knowledge, many months ago, the offer that APRM, for example, made to fund or help fund such an appraisal, and I think I did point out at that time that their preliminary assessment was about 3.4 to 3.6 million. But you are, of course, free to take on this task independently for your own peace of mind and in the interests of Metchosin. Last bit, I wonder when and how do the successful folks working on the Bilston Creek corridor come into this picture? I know that we have all learned based on previous local land use issues. Good example is the Boys and Girls Club, that a win is much more likely to happen if everyone is on the same page and working together. And those folks should be part of whichever way you're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong.
Good evening. My name is Richard Simpson. I'm a former member or current member of the Bufferland Working Group. After I speak, you'll think I've spoken to Bonnie, but I swear I did not. I live at 1287 Boulder Path Road, which is off of Neald Road and a short distance uphill from the Bufferland. I'm speaking on item 7A and specifically the recommendation to approach the CRD to discuss the sale of the Bufferland. I believe that staff have not provided a detailed and thorough consideration of the 4-phase approach to protecting the Bufferland, which was the working group's favorite approach. Instead, staff's recommendation is to pursue the working group's last resort recommendation to consider a sale to a third party. Unless there's a dramatic urgency to choose a path now, and I don't believe there is, I think the committee should not approve the recommendation. The committee needs to be provided with complete and accurate financial implications for the proposed 4-phase approach, which has not been provided in tonight's briefing note. I recognize that there is a lot of work to be done here, but it must be done in order to make the best decision on behalf of Metchosin and Metchosin residents. We have to get the Bufferland decision right, and the briefing note itself suggests that if we lose control of the Bufferland, sections 95 at 100 acres, sections 25 at 100 acres, and section 28 at 50 acres might be the next to go. Again, I urge the committee to not accept the recommendation to pursue a sale or discussions with the CRD at this time, and complete a detailed analysis of the 4-phase approach recommended by the Bufferland Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Anyone else for public participation?
Hello, I'm Bailey Spitry. I am a Neald Road resident. I also served on the Bufferland Working Group. I'm not a public speaker, so I'm really sorry about my shakiness and nervousness. I echo some of the sentiments of our previous speakers, specifically of Bonnie and Richard. I think that there was a lack of thoughtfulness put into the CIO's report that reflected our initial recommendation. I think it was almost like a jump to, here's your exit route, take the CRE route. I also don't think that there was a clear enough argument to suggest that Metchosin couldn't yield the cost of maintaining and keeping control of the bufferland. I am severely worried about the loss of this land. It not only would bring a lot more people to Nield Road and traffic to the area, but it would also be trampling some very, very sensitive ecosystems. It would also bring, use of the, like, other people to the road, which is a dead-end road. So there's no other reason to come up the road at this point, unless you're a resident. For the most part, of course, we have people that come and bikers that use the road, but it keeps the traffic quite low. I've got young kids. We love to take even just a walk up the road or down the road. My preference personally, not as a member of the Bufferland Working Group, but as a citizen and a resident of Nield Road, would be to, if we could, just close it off so that there was no access whatsoever. I understand that there's challenges with that, but I think that that's something that we should look at a little bit deeper.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Spiteri.
Sarah Epstein, Metchosin Road. Just maybe a little concerned about some of the issues here with the thought about protection, because of course we want to protect it. It would be great to have it as is for as long as possible, but I think there has to be some thought about the costs and the realities of how you could protect it, because I mean, I'm not familiar with all the access points, but short of having like fencing the whole thing, which would obviously fence in animals as well as keeping out people, that's not a very realistic thing, plus the cost would be astronomical. I don't really know what you would do to, other than have like armed gunmen around. Like, you can't really, I've literally seen that in like Vietnam, so I don't think we're going to do that. So I think like we have to be realistic about what we can do, like in terms of resources. But I think, if you don't have created trails, it is going to reduce somewhat. You're never going to stop people from going in there. Like, it's just, if they want to go in there, they're going to go in there. There's a fence, they're going to hop a fence unless it's electrified. But again, where the deer are going to go, I don't know. So you're going to have these challenges, right? So I just think we have to be somewhat realistic about how much we can keep people in and out of there. I don't know what the situation is now, if people go in and out a lot. I'd be curious if people are in there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anthony.
Hi there, name's Ken Showers, 3850 Happy Valley. Been out here for 45 years?
53.
Okay, yeah. I'm just going to speak to my letter. I think you all have it. At least I know two of you did, Councillor Shukin and Donaldson. Thank you for the call back. This, to me, is just another thoughtless move to whittle away more land of Metchosin. At one time, Metchosin used to go almost up to the Rangers, and that's within my memory. So, but other thoughtless actions have gradually willed it away. So, anyway, we had a referendum, and we thought things were kind of settled. Now I find that it's a bit of an insult to the referendum group that someone has come up with the idea to pick the last thing that they put on the recommendation with some statement of the fact we can't afford to maintain it. Who made that statement? Well, it said staff. Who on staff? You?
Mr. Showers, no, sorry, sir. I'm going to ask you not to point.
Okay.
I'm pointing. But Mr. Showers, you do have to address the chair.
Withdrawn. Withdrawn.
Thank
you. Do you know who made that statement, Mr.?
Sir, I don't recall that's.
Huh? You did.
Yeah, but I think the statement was made that the cost would be significant.
Right. So to make a statement like that, you need numbers to go with it. Do you have the numbers? If not, why not?
Okay, keep going, Mr. George, thank you. Yeah.
Well, someone's shaking their head. Okay, anyway, so I just feel that you do not have the moral right to sell this land. You may have the legal right, but not the moral right. It is owned by all of the people in Metchosin. You don't own any more of it than we do, and it's not yours. If you're going to sell it or proceed to sell it, then I would say we have to have a referendum on it, a proper referendum. It's simply worded to sell or not sell. Now, there's a way around that. The municipality, in order to do that, has to put together a bylaw in order to make a referendum to dispose of land. But there's a sneaky way around that. It's I feel what's called an additional way by which you simply have to have 10% of the residents submit in writing their feelings, probably to sell or not to sell. Well, you know, that would take a hell of a long time to get done. And we know that would be a sneaky way for a councillor to say, hey, we got the way we want it. So I don't think we want to see that happen. If you're going to try and sell it, put it to a referendum and let us tell you en masse what we feel. So if you need cash badly, then raise the taxes a bit. Don't sneak around and try and sell property to raise it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for public participation?
Thank you, Brent Donaldson, Charleston Court. Feeding off some of the comments that we've heard this evening, we live in the valley, and a number of these folks live on Neil Road. I suggest anybody that lives on this side of Metchosin get in their car on a weekday, maybe sit at the end of Neil Road for 20 minutes, half an hour. They start around 7, they quit about 5, 6 days a week. That's been going on for 6 years. And quite frankly, these folks have gone through hell. We hear the blasting at our place. We're half a mile away. I think it's just insulting to these folks. So I think we have to look at the folks that live over here and have a nice soft pillow to sleep on. Try living over in that part of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Avro Yocum Windfall Road. We're 7 years into the buffer. I don't see it as a hurry. There is absolutely no panic. So let's give it another 7. As far as cost, just shelve it. Work on the school, which is currently in our 5-year plan. It costs us $200,000 a year. So worry about those costs. Shelve the buffer for now, till there's some better plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yoakum. Okay, any more public participation? So going once, twice, thank you very much. We'll keep moving on here. So, committee, we're going to go to item number 4, which is the adoption of the minutes from the March 11th meeting. Any comments or discussion on that meeting, which of course featured another interesting topic of the Duke Road East Trail. But any comments, or can I have a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Councillor Donaldson and seconded by Councillor Epp. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, receipt of minutes from the 2 PTASC meetings, the first of March 19th. I'll just, we'll take them separately. Receipt of minutes from the PTASC meeting of March 19th. I just want to flag that this was the meeting with the new members of PTASC, Kathy Atherton, Caroline Donahue, and David Shanks as well. And a lot of discussion about Duke Road East there as well. But any comments, or if I can have a motion to receive?
We receive.
Thank you, Councillor.
Second.
Okay.
Just a comment, if I may.
Sure.
I'm just curious, I think these are the minutes they're talking about a survey on Duke Road East, and I was hoping we would hear back from PTASC prior to that, or I guess it will come through administration if we were to get a survey, but I'm not clear on the necessity for such a thing. So, and we may pick that up in your council's report.
Yeah, I'll address it right now. We didn't talk about it that much at the last meeting. The plan right now is to put forward a proposal for a survey. This will go to our CAO, who will then decide the best approach in terms of whether it's an RFP or some type of competitive process. Pending that, the plan would be, the recommendation from PTASC is that there would be communication to residents about the potential of a survey coming. The whole idea here is that we need to understand if there is in fact the potential for a trail, for a roadside trail on that area. And the reason for that is there's a number of boundary complexities in such that certain properties appear to go right to the road. So we want to understand what is possible, and pending that, we'll make a decision on going forward. There's also been talk about an open house to further discuss a roadside trail, and we'll look at that as we go ahead. So,
yeah, I provided yourself and Mr. Aubrey, the chair of the committee, a note. I had the opportunity to meet with some Duke Road Trail residents who have had decades of work in engineering and public works in Colwood and Victoria. And their suggestion, the cost of this trail, particularly phase 3, might be in the range of $500,000 to $2 million. And so with that kind of idea of the experienced people looking at it, I'm not sure how much work we want to do on surveying all of that when we would look at spending our entire Growing Communities Fund to put a single trail in. Prior to, and reading in the notes, the active transportation plan. In particularly, I guess I'm thinking about the planning process and the idea that we would set priorities and say, well, here's the number of potential projects. And then through the public consultation that I'm reading about for the active transportation, that might be the time then to decide, yeah, it goes on the list, is it the top priority or the bottom priority? And then take a look at the survey. When I'm looking at the minutes, I'm realizing, holy crow, look at the number of trails that were proposed that were never feasible. So this may be another trail that's not feasible. The people that spoke to the Duke Road residents with the experience also explained to me that typically in a place like Colwood, they would use a CRD map viewer to see just where the road edges and where the property lines are, and that would be much less expensive, in fact no cost at all, to do this work rather than conducting a survey, which wouldn't be used for roadside trail planning elsewhere. So I just wondered if we might hand this back to the CAO to take a look at and say, hey, where does this fit in our big plan, rather than shooting ahead and spending money, which we're hearing there are other uses for the dollars. I'm just anxious about such a large chunk of money possibly required.
So the process is underway to develop a scope of work that will be presented to the CAO. I think there'll be opportunity for discussion after that. What is interesting, and PTASC is aware of this as well, that the active transportation grant has been received, and while this was underway, we didn't have that knowledge. So PTASC is plugged in. We have a representative who will be serving on the active transportation plan. And I don't doubt phase 3 poses some challenges, but as we heard from Mr. Shanks earlier today, there's the potential for the addition of some traffic calming measures, advisory shoulders. There are some options there. And again, I've spent a fair bit of time with residents who have pointed out the safety issues as well, and the potential for a trail on that side. One of the things that came up with this meeting of March 19th is we talked about where Duke Road East was within the Parks and Trails master plan. This has come up again and again. Can't do the trail because it's not on the plan, or it's low priority. In fact, it's almost like one of those automatic plate dispensers. As you lift off a plate and do a project or decide it's not feasible, the next one comes up as priority. And what PTASC had pointed out is we're now at the point where there's only essentially 2 left to do. and that is Duke Road East and Park Drive that have not actually been done yet. So I continue to see that this is one to explore, but to your point, Councillor Gray, not charge ahead with necessarily in terms of allocation of major funds. So
yeah, I'm concerned about the spending before we've looked at priorities. The other point that I learned speaking to these experienced public works and engineering people was that the first phase as well is problematic because if one just digs it out with volunteers without an engineering solution, we're going to end up with the kind of deep ruts in the ground when cars pull in and large puddles as we have on the Metchosin Road Trail just opposite where the folks are living. You know, when you're too close to the road with the trail, it just degrades into a mud bath. So I'm worried about that contribution as well in it. So I just want to have a good look at it before we approve it. And I note from our minutes that we just approved that we'd hear back from PTASC with their input and recommendations on Duke Road. So maybe that would happen in concert with the CAO's review before we spend money.
Sure. Councillor Donaldson?
Just a point of clarity, so we have money in the budget for this survey.
Yeah.
The survey, is it to go from where the end of the sidewalk is to Chapel Heights, or is it to go all the way up to Metchosin?
It will be to go up all the way to Metchosin.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so thank you for the great conversation. There's more discussion to be had with the CAO, particularly when we get the scope of work for the survey. But the question for us now is whether we receive these minutes. So I'll call the question. If no further discussion, call the question. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. The second...
So if I just might interrupt to say, I'm talking about whether or not a survey is prepared or done. I think there's ways to do this without a survey.
Okay. And there will be other opportunities to raise that point, Councillor Gray. So I will bring this back to PTASC as well. So thank you. The minutes, just preceding minutes from the April 24th meeting. If I could ask the committee's indulgence for 1 second, I just want to walk through these really quickly, or the highlights, if you don't mind. So we had a presentation by Bev Herford of urban design, urban systems around the active transportation process. And we discussed the process, timelines, general focus, and the outlook for community engagement. And there was some interesting discussion about how active transportation aligns with the Parks and Trails Master Plan or not. One thing the active transportation plan planning does is it focuses on sidewalks and trails, but it doesn't focus on park at all. So that was a big thing that we need to be concerned about, especially if we're looking to update the Parks and Trails Master Plan. So, and I'll have more to say on this a little later. And as mentioned, work is underway to develop a scope of work for the contractor. We just highlighted some of the work that members are doing, including removing trees from trails. And there was a discussion about involving the students for Westmount School in terms of trail maintenance. Those students are active in terms of picking invasives as well. Be great to have them involved elsewhere. And so PTASC also got plugged into a proposed connector trail at the Beckingham subdivision that would go from Beckingham Road along the edge of the property to connect with the Goose. And we did a site visit 2 weeks ago with the people from Lita Homes. What will happen there if things stay the same is there will be a 6-meter right-of-way on the edge of the property that will be turned over to the district basically as a road designation. It won't be a road, but it'll be a 6-meter band of which a trail will be built within that. So we walked that, we pointed out a few interesting things. I think Lita seemed to be really open to working with us on providing the best design, so more discussion to occur with that. So I would, if I could get a motion to receive the minutes from April 24th.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Gray and seconded by Councillor Rapp. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, so we next come to item number 7A, which is the report on the Bufferland Working Group's recommendation and future management options for the Bufferland. And maybe if I could have Mr. Payette address this. And Mr. Payette, thanks for putting this together. One thing I do want to note is you did note this as, I think, an initial review of the recommendations by the Bufferland Working Group. I don't disagree with Richard Simpson and Bailey Spiteri that we've taken a pretty light view of the recommendations themselves. But I think you have your reasons for doing that. So.
Yeah. Hello. Okay, thanks. So the recommendation was read out. I won't have to repeat that. And I do appreciate the working group's detailed work, and the report is fulsome and understandable. Various phases through the decision process is understandable. And all the comments tonight were excellent, I must say. And the whole idea was to bring forward this item to the committee and have a fulsome discussion, and have transparency. So check and check. The one comment that I have from my kind of initial perspective is that phase one, council has not made a decision on phase one. So that leads, me to think that we should review the options and, to get council to that phase one decision. So that's my starting comment. And I don't believe there's any firm direction on considering the land to be a protective ecological buffer, but I do clearly agree, and I agree with zoning as park as soon as possible, for sure. And that would not cost us a lot of money. It would show progress, and it would show, support to the buffer land working committee, for sure. I do have a couple of bullets. I don't think I'll read through the whole report because everybody's read it. That'd be insulting, but I do want to comment a little bit on what I think is more realistic, in that there is not a 100% solution to this situation. I think we can all agree that. I think there's an 80% solution for sure, and not everybody's going to be happy either way. So let's think about, the way ahead in terms of not getting your 100% solution, but having a little bit of give and take. So, 80% solution. Second is that the long-term management, I'm concerned about the long-term management plan and the sustainability of our decision. There is no hurry for a decision. The development of Center Mountain is going to take years. So that's correct. We don't have to rush into a decision. But we have to keep in mind that any decision we make is hopefully in perpetuity, and the district has to manage that decision. And so the cost escalation is in the management of the park. And so, do we all know what that would be? No. But I can kind of understand the fact that if it's going to be a completely 100% ecological reserve, which is fine, it's up to the community, but there is a cost of keeping it pristine. There's also a cost of keeping it as a park. And somewhere in between, there's a happy medium. There is some time appreciation on bringing this forward. There is a really amazing opportunity for a wildlife corridor from Sioux Road all the way to the coast, to Tidewater, which is spectacular, and I would absolutely put Metchosin on the map. Again, to get to that, there's some land continuity issues that we have a bit of a time appreciation for, and so bringing this recommendation forward to the public and to the committee for discussion helps with the time appreciation for that land continuity. And finally, there's a whole bunch of items that are in the future that I don't believe we really need to, decide on tonight or in the next 2 weeks or a month, but things like, like price and valuing the land and where the buffers should be. A lot of the little details I think are important, but what's really important to me is to get council to that decision of phase 1, which is moving ahead with ecological reserve or not. Okay. So, and then we can talk about or any questions.
So, question for you, but I'd like to see if council committee, do you have any questions for Mr. Payette? Maybe I can just start it off, break the ice here. Mr. Payette, you're recommending that we approach the CRD and begin discussions with them on potential disposition, a sale, again, based on potential of a natural park with ecological terms and conditions acceptable to Metchosin and the CRD. So, approach for discussions. You're not recommending a sale to the CRD, right, at this stage?
No.
Okay. Okay. Just to clarify that.
Like an inquiry.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the spotlight coming down. What did you say at 10 o'clock on the 23rd?
Yes, that's coming. That's coming. Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Payette? We can have further questions as we, but I'd like to move to discussion if there's no questions. So, I do want to, yeah, okay. Okay. Council, any comment? I can make my own, start things off, but Councillor Donaldson.
Sure, I'll jump in with both feet. So I really appreciate that the community has come out and spoken, attended the meetings. We had great attendance at our public engagement meetings during the 6-month working group. And we've had a lot of interesting learning to go with this. But this didn't just start last year when we had the Bufferland Working Group. This started way back in 2016, at least 2016. 2017 was the land swap referendum. We had an astounding 76% in favor of it, that this whole community had the opportunity to vote for it. And with that, we obtained 113 acres with the idea of having that transition of the buffer and green space area to protect the neighbors that were adjacent to the residential build out, the ecosystems around all the way from the south lobe up to the north lobe, and the protection of the creeks, because the headwaters are now in what has become the land swap, which is the industrial park, which somebody had suggested was clear cut, and it was clear cut at the start of 2017. Fast forward to 2021, when the CRD sale was announced in the paper, that raised a lot of flags, 550 signatures in less than 2 weeks. And that wasn't just that neighborhood, that was across the community. And that sale got stopped at that time, and it wasn't just because it was $274,000. It was because people don't want to sell it. People want it there. It's a buffer. It's what's left of the 350 acres. They still holding on to the idea that we're hoping to get the 3 crown lands as part of this. So far, it's the 113 acres. It is a wildlife corridor, as it says. A lot of the habitat has been destroyed. We've already heard from farmers how that's happened with the displacement, but there still is wildlife. Friday night, resident contacted our household, and within 5 minutes on Facebook, there was a wolf sighting. We've never had issues with them, but they're there. And there was a lovely picture of the wolf looking back at them. So they are traversing up and down. We have recommended in our report at certain access points, we may have to do some fencing. We also discussed not to fence the whole thing because it would interact with the wildlife. So there's a lot of things that we had talked about. At the time, we didn't have enough or important information that would have helped us, maybe now, with the stormwater detention pond and where it's located. I mean, I've read one document that said it was an acre large. I don't know if that still stands. We didn't have designs of what the residential park was going to look like, or how tall the big wall was going to be that they're phenomenal for building in the urban community adjacent to us. We campaigned, all of us, on keeping Metchosin rural. This is part of rural. This is the only buffer we really have, other than a few orphan parks that go through Glen Forest, Highmount, Saddleback. We don't have it at this end. We've got Royal Bay hitting right up against our border. So we need to keep rural, rural. We need to honor what we've got. We own it. And I'll cut it short because I got other things, and I'm sure my colleagues will say things too. We have other parks that don't belong to us. 100 Acre Wood is a lease, and we're putting money into it, and we're putting maintenance into it. Some of that is volunteer, some of it is not. Sometimes it's contracted out. So I would be interested to know how much 25 and 28 has cost us in the last 10 years. We've never seen that. We've never quibbled about it in the budget, ever. I don't think that the buffer line has cost us too much right now. We put in a budget to replace the gate. We bought the gate when it was broken anyways. There's a road that goes right into Old Logging Road. There's so many unknowns, and I think the suggestion of actually sitting down, maybe council and seal with the buffer land working group would be advantageous too at some point in time. So I'm going to stop it there. I've got other things I'd like to say, but I want to hear what my colleagues have to say as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ray, Councillor Donaldson, Councillor, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly agree that the buffer land needs to be protected and be a buffer. What concerns me, and after dealing with this now for several years, is that, I mean, initially I thought, okay, I would just make it into an ecological reserve, and that'll be it. It'll be protected forever. However, just knowing, the way the growth around us is burgeoning, and with having those houses and all those residents, hundreds of them, right next door to the buffer land, like what is not covered in with the buffer land working group is there's a lot of things that are covered. Obviously, it was a great report, but there's nothing that says how we are going to keep people out of there. You can't just put up a sign and have people will just ignore. We know they ignore signs, and that is a real worry for me. And so when I read this, I thought, well, and I was always against selling it, and I still may be against selling it. But I'd like to hear what some of the options are. I'd like to see what CRD has to say. That doesn't mean I would go for it, but I'd just like to know, because I think we have to really look a little bit deeper into the repercussions, say 5 and 10 years down the road, when there's a whole swack of people living there, and all they've got is that green space that's right next door. And to me, they are going to be using it. And I just, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see people going in and making trails all over the place and going in there with their bikes and things. And I don't know how Metchosin is going to handle that. Maybe we can in the future in the budget. It's, I guess it's a possibility. But I really think we need to look at more options of how we can protect it, whether not just with the words with, yeah, it's a great park management plan, but there has to be, money, there has to be resources, there has to be staff, there has to be a lot of things that go into that. And we kind of need to know if we can do it or not, or if we need to look at other options. And that's why I would like to just hear what they have to say and have the public hear what they have to say, and then make a more qualified decision on going ahead with phase 1.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gray, anything?
I too, I'm okay with exploring options. I think that's sensible, get more information, know what you're dealing with. I so appreciate the work, the time and effort put in by the working group to go through all this material. And what I'm not happy about is, I appreciate hearing from people tonight, what I'm not happy about is that we seem to be moving kind of in a direction different than what the working group recommended. And so as one of the, I'm sorry, I can't remember who said, hey, wait a minute, the CRD sales way down the list here, what's going on? And I think that's a fair comment. So I'm just curious to ask someone who's been on the working group, Councillor Schuker or Councillor Donaldson, is there a way to achieve what the working group is looking for, ecological conservation, with a sale to the CRD? Or if that's something we find out as the staff works with the CRD? Like I think a practical point that Councillor Epp has just raised, which is there's 350 houses going in next door. I don't understand, like when I look at the report, I think, wait a minute, what about that? I don't see how we keep an ecological conserve with a CRD or without the CRD. I'm not clear about that process, and I'm left wanting.
I can address that as best I can. I'll speak just personally, not on behalf of the working group. I'd like to think that there is the potential there. I'm not convinced by some of the comments earlier today that selling to the CRD presents the worst possible option, and that we'll see development, we'll see houses there. I'm sorry, I'm not convinced of that at all. I believe that if we can explore and work with the CRD and bring our values to that discussion, I think we could see the potential of a favorable outcome. But at the very least, I think I have to confess that I am of the mind to keep our options open, including a discussion with the CRD, but approaching it with, again, our own values at the forefront. And I think, again, I believe I'm speaking for everyone in saying that we would not entertain a sale for any purpose but park or conservancy area, a natural space. Council, is that, I'm not hearing anyone disagree with that. So we're not ever contemplating a sale with the point of the CRD possibly selling the land further. I think that would have to be baked into the sales agreement. So now what terms and conditions, as Mr. Payette has actually indicated in his recommendation, we are able to secure from the CRD. I mean, that remains up for discussion for sure, but I think we have to approach knowing full well that we're seeking that the land as a buffer and to serve as that. Sorry, I'm underway here. The one thing that I feel is a huge risk is to keep the buffer land in its current zoning. What we're seeing right now is how long things take at the municipal level, and it's simply because there is so much in front of us, and every issue seems to be a significant one. For example, we have the housing needs assessment that we're going to be doing in the current year, and that has the potential to change significantly the complexion of Metchosin. That is a big issue. This one is significant as well. We've talked about water issues, etc. So there's many issues, and the resourcing is very limited. And I worry on that point, I worry that the buffer land may not get the attention it deserves, and the attention that will actually lead to an effective status of it being an actual buffer land. So I have a few more comments, but
yeah,
please go ahead.
Thanks for going through that. I just wanted to clarify, some public participation raised the issue of sections 28, 25, and 95. And I think at the moment, we're not talking about those sections. depending on where discussions go, but section 25 and 28 are a long way away from the buffer land. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Those lands are coming to us through the reconciliation agreement. There's no question about that.
Just to comment on that, I think it's a great point that Mr. Pyatt included that, because what it points to is how much land we have the potential of coming into and will in turn have to manage it. So that's 363 acres of parkland on top of the other land that we have if everything works out in time. So, yeah.
I'm going to just add one other point while you're pausing there, and that's that when I mention the idea of being open to exploring options, that's what I'm thinking. So the CRD is one option. There are other options. We heard again from the public tonight the notion of, I'm not sure the right words, partnership with academic institutions. We've heard presented to us previously about possibilities of a conservation organization being involved. I think that's in part of the Bufferland Working Group. So I think while discussing things with the CRD, the idea would be to sort out what other possibilities there are. It's a question of options as opposed to shutting down options. It's a question of what are realistic options that we're facing.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Johnson, thanks.
Yeah, so thank you for that point, because that helps me understand that maybe not just meeting, I think having a public meeting with CRD is a very good option, so that our public can actually understand better well, maybe us too, what it is the CRD may or may not be able to do. Back to your point about the sections, again, I want to say we already manage 2 of them. So we've been doing that for a very long time.
Yeah.
When we did put this report together, we didn't have a lot of information. We do have a little bit more. We still won't have all the information. It was interesting reading the CAO's report and how things got brought forward, because it's been a while since we've read this, but it was good to delve back into it again. I'm only disappointed that we didn't see more exploration done of what is possible with the phases. The one that was very outstanding and I thought was a great idea, it came up, was partnering up with the post-secondary institutions as ongoing studies, like 10, 20, 30 years. There's all sorts of learning with environmental studies, how things grow, how things don't. I know myself, having walked through there for years, how even with the tree line having been changed and what's growing now and the climate change, different trees are growing back. So doing a reforestation of what was there will not exist. So the land is already teaching us, just by what we're seeing that's growing that's different. And that came out with the different concepts that we were researching as a group. So there's always an ongoing of learning, and again, getting back to putting up a big fence, that's not realistic, that's costly. But there are points where we could do certain things. We could do bioswales. That was an excellent idea that was brought up at some point, because we don't know what's going to come down now that trees, dirt, and rock have all been destroyed. There is money coming in. There's not money coming in at the school. I have to say, we're putting money into it. But there is money coming in. We have a 7% tax share of the industrial park, on average $14,000 a year. Unfortunately, it's been going to general revenue. We asked about that being put into a reserve last year. That'll increase as that activity. So it's not, I don't know if it's going to sustain it or not. I don't have the answers. But there are those obvious things that we have, that we do know. So yeah, keep our options open. I have to say I'll keep my options open and support the residents. They screamed loud and clear when we went around with those petitions to not sell or give away more of our land.
Yeah. Thank you.
We own it.
Yeah. Councillor Gray?
There's an obvious circumstance this evening is that the mayor is not with us. And I think that it's really important that the mayor be involved in this discussion. This is a fundamental issue, I know, for her. We've all talked about that in the past. So I just want to, typically we discuss these things, we have a pretty good discussion in one of our committees, and then we raise it to council, and at council it's pretty pro forma, except if something's come up. So I don't mind moving the motion here in order to get it onto council's table so the mayor would be with us and lead the discussion. I think it's important, this is too important to think that we do it otherwise. But then I would ask indulgence of the committee that at council we might have a good discussion rather than a pro forma. It's already been approved by the committee. So with that understanding, I'd make the motion to move this to council so that we could actually have a discussion including the mayor.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table.
Yeah, and I'll move the words that are here before us. The Community Planning Committee recommend that council direct staff to explore a suggested option to approach CRD to discuss the disposition and management of the bufferland as a potential natural park with ecological terms and conditions acceptable to both Metchosin and the CRD. And in making that motion, I'm saying I don't think we're deciding tonight, but I think we need a full council to have a good discussion about this, and there may be more meetings required, so I'm okay if that happens too.
Okay, I can second that motion as well. Just in discussion now, if I could start this, the one thing I would like to ask Mr. Payette is whether the CRD might be open to coming to address council. I'm struggling to understand when that is appropriate. And darn, there was one more thing. And so this is a question, Mr. Payette. You mentioned there's a bit of some urgency, and one of the things I feel like we might do is get a sense of the CRD, like whether they're willing to meet some of the terms and conditions that we're actually interested in. Like, you should never negotiate in public, but we kind of are now as a community. Like, we're reluctant to sell. We want to keep it in its natural state. We're not interested in having parts of the land hived off. That seems to be kind of consensus in the room, but I'd be curious to know if the CRD can kind of give us some sense of whether they can work with that. Again, I'm not sure whether they could or not. Any sense? Or?
I can ask them if they...
Okay. Sorry, double barrel.
Like, I have to ask them. I don't know.
Okay. But I think it'd be interesting to ask them if they might come to address council and the public at some point. So, yeah. So
it might be helpful to have our discussion at council before our presentation from the CRD, because the interests are bigger than the CRD here. It's a bigger discussion.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to the idea. I think hearing from the CRD at some point, if we were to proceed, would be important.
Yeah. The one reason I bring this up is I feel like there's a significant distrust of the CRD. There's an article that was circulating about how the CRD, and it was mentioned I think earlier today, how the CRD bought property and then decided they were going to sell it off. So again, what assurances can they give us that this is not something they would potentially do? And yeah, part of that is all in the sales contract as well. So yeah. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Gray, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? And the motion is essentially to accept the recommendation, but a further discussion at council. So, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just why would we push this up to council? Why don't we just keep it at the committee level when the 4 or 5 of us are here?
Go ahead.
Like, I'm looking at number 2, that the committee requests further information, which is more information from CRD.
Yeah.
And more information even on the other stuff.
Yeah.
That's what's missing.
Councillor, do you want to?
Well, I heard earlier land continuity issue, time appreciation. So I think getting it to council and having a discussion wouldn't matter if it's here or there, but at least the mayor would be joining us, and I think that's important. I want to give her due.
Yeah. And the one thing I would just say is more information in a way harkens back to some of the bigger questions that, admittedly, I think Mr. Simpson and Ms. Spiteri were right. We have treated very lightly some of the recommendations from the Bufferland Working Group. Digging into those deeper is going to be a longer process. I'm comfortable with moving it to council myself and having that discussion there. So.
I'm just perpetuating it perhaps, but I think then having had this discussion now, for me, I've heard from members of the public tonight. I got the correspondence. We've now had some discussion, and the opportunity now to return to council, considering all of this material, I think will serve us well. And I'd like to hear from people between now and council meeting as well.
I suspect we will. So, okay.
Well, it's just in relation to the effort and work that went in by the working group, and and people who've been watching, paying attention, and joining, came to the meetings.
Yeah.
I think it's just we seem to be veering away, so I want to be clear about why are we veering away and how are we managing ourselves in a way that's comes to do with respecting the work and the time and energy people have put in. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no further comments, I will call the question. All in favor of the motion? And opposed? Thank you very much. Councillor Donaldson opposed. Okay, that's carried. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Good discussion. The final piece is the council's update. I'm going to be just very quick. And the one thing I just wanted to focus on was the Parks and Trails Master Plan and the input. So just briefly, we talked about it in light of the consultant who came, and essentially PTASC said that they want some direction from council in terms of how to engage on the AT plan. We've since had a representative plugged into the process, and I think that's how it's going to work. That representative will come back to Parks and Trails and provide that input, and if there's opportunities for public engagement, that'll happen en masse as well. The one thing, number of things were pointed out. The 2009 plan remains very solid, and if the process were to kick off, it would be, the comment was, let's have a look at what we did and why we did certain things and why we didn't do certain things. So get specific there. Again, connectivity is a high priority, and that would be built into the Parks and Trails Master Plan update. There was a sense that we would need external resources to move the process along. And we talked about, again, the buffer land and the additional land that might come to us, the growth that we're seeing on the edges of Metchosin and Colwood and Langford. And the one comment was made is that actually a relationship with the CRD could be improved. So, and what I would recommend, and I'm not really sure this needs a motion, but that, well, actually the Parks and Trails plan, hold off in kicking off until we go through the active transportation plan, and we all get a chance to learn and be informed from the active transportation plan. And ideally, we would kick the Parks and Trails Master Plan process, kick that process off in the fall. So I would make a motion to that effect and recommend that to council for further discussion. Big thing here is that we hold off on activating the Parks and Trails Master Plan until the fall. So, anyone want to second? Okay, thank you. Thank you. And any discussion? Councillor Griffith?
Sure, just to ask, and I think it's probably, with all the notes here, the active transportation, this is like question 3, the chair to Councillor, will I think it's Beth, will she come and talk to us here at Planning Committee, or just to sort of run through what we're up to and how we're going to tackle it? It's a pretty good description actually in the notes, but I just wondered if you'll bring her here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the exact next steps are. Do you know? I was wondering if Mr. Payette knows. I know they're working on it, and I know the public information or engagement session will be, I think, coming up pretty shortly, but I haven't heard back from her about that yet.
Yep, through the chair, exactly. Gathering information currently. We have one member from PTASC that's our liaison, so we can get information during the process of the active transportation plan, And then there is time for public engagement, and then chat with this committee as well. So it'll all happen sequentially, and we'll get a good result at the end of the study.
Well, through the chair, one of the things in the notes from PTASC was that the discussion about whether this would happen quickly or gradually. And it looked like PTASC was saying, well, let's do this gradually to make sure we get enough public input. Is that where we're landing?
Yeah.
Like, again, for us at council?
Well, I think it was kind of that, there was just sort of the discussion kind of evolved that way at the Parks and Trails meeting, but I think now that we do have a representative from there that's going to work on it with Ms. Herford. I think, it's hard to say, like we just kind of left it open. It's harder for them to have all the engagement that they want and get the information over the summer. They usually like to do it longer. We were hoping that it might get done, the whole thing might get done by October so that we could apply for some of the grant money available when the intake comes along in the fall. But it might not be possible. So we're just kind of, playing it by ear right now and to see how it goes, because we want to make sure that it's a very fulsome, complete plan. So, nobody wants to rush it or cut corners with it. So I'll know better probably for the next meeting. I'll have a timeline that I can present and give everybody a better idea about how the whole process is going to work.
Through the chair to Councillor, is this just roadside trails, or are there other means of transportation than active transportation? It's like we've got two councillors here, so I'm not sure who to sort of direct the conversation to.
Well, I think I mentioned that when we first got it, but it's all transportation. It's the idea is getting people out of their vehicles and using other modes of transportation. So that'll be roadside trails, cycling lanes, road safety improvements to make walking or with mobile scooters safer, things like that on the sides of the roads. So it'll include the Duke Road area and maybe the Hans Helgeson School roadside trail idea, but certainly it covers all areas of active transportation. And as far as the Parks and Trails goes, that from what we could see, is that their main contribution would be to explain the connectivity, so that because the active transportation group deals mostly with roadways and what goes on along the roadways, and so connectivity to the interior trails is important.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks very much. There is one more issue on my councillor's update around groundwater matters, and I'm sensing, I recognize there's another meeting that we have to go through. I don't know if we want to have a further discussion on this. It relates to proof of water, and this comes from an earlier discussion about whether we institute a policy or whether we try and enshrine standards, we can enshrine standards into a bylaw. The preference when we talked about this before was to go the bylaw route, so I recall. I understand that maybe even introducing a policy when we do have a bylaw might cause some confusion, and in terms of subdivision approvals, there's a tremendous pressure on our and scrutiny on our approving officer as well, so things have to be done right. So we've heard that the subdivision servicing bylaw needs an update, and that work will be done on this as soon as possible. Council, I don't know if there's committee, I don't know if there's any more discussion on this that we want to undertake. Well, we all recognize that water is a critical issue here, and we have to look for ways to address as best we can, or adapt as best we can to the realities that are before us. And to that, we have, I just want to pass on, as I say here, thanks to Councillor Donaldson and Ms. Leduc for leading 3 sessions on water issues. There is a movement that is going, some initial steps to extend the work that Ms. Leduc and Councillor Donaldson started, in terms of a community monitoring network potentially, but getting people together that have an interest, common interest and a common experience with groundwater. We'll see where things go. So more to come on that. So, and I just want to recognize we have correspondence from the Baxters, the Showers, the Woods, and the Lambricks. I had a chance to talk to several of these people today, and I've committed, and again, all this is on the bufferland. I have an appointment with Chloe Lambic tomorrow to talk further about this. And yeah, so.
I just had a question, and I didn't ask you this before, so we may not have the answer. In the very first descriptions about short-term vacation rentals, and I saw the note here, changes to legal non-conforming buildings. As of May 1st, protections for non-conforming use of dwelling will no longer apply to short-term rentals. And I'm wondering about this question. There are lots of people, I think, who chose legal non-conforming dwellings that they may have used for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is buildings that were built pre-incorporation. And so when I saw the note there, I thought, oh gosh, I hadn't noticed that previously looking at the legislation. So I jumped and looked at it just before the meeting tonight. And the note, it's not in the legislation, but a describer that the government put out, says local governments will have discretion to determine whether short-term rentals previously granted legal non-conforming use status may continue to be permitted. So it sounds like it's not a prohibition, but rather we have to make a decision about that. So if it comes up, we should meet and talk about that.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I pulled this information right from the website, which, I hadn't noticed it before myself, but that is a significant one.
Well, it might be different. Like the legal non-conforming status for STRs may be different than what I'm talking about, which is legal non-conforming buildings pre-incorporation. That may be a different issue.
Okay.
Couldn't tell looking at it today.
Again, you can have them, you can rent them out long-term, apparently, but in terms of STRs, that's the information I have. Yeah.
Okay. And then just a typo, the very second last sentence, I guess, under what was endorsed at the 2022 AVIC convention, number 3, it was develop a regular reporting process regarding the health and viability of high-risk aquifers.
Okay. Thanks. Trying to think if I pulled this directly from the AVIC site, but I'll check. Thank you. Great. Okay, folks, if I could have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Epp, second. All in favor? I'm sure we are. Thank you.